Find other great podcasts like this one at podmoth.network.
Hi, I'm Molly.
And I'm Abigail.
We're sisters.
And we believe in ghosts.
Welcome to Supernatural Sisters, a podcast all about ghostly encounters, bone-chilling monsters, and basically anything that goes bump in the night. Each week, we talk about a haunted place, a legendary monster, or a story that sends shivers down our spines. And maybe we'll talk about the pottery scene from Ghost.
He's not a ghost in that scene. There are other parts of that movie where he's a ghost.
Subscribe wherever you get podcasts.
And remember, we believe you.
Hey, Twisted listeners. I'm Cindy.
And I'm Diva.
And this is Twisted Listeners, a podcast about murder
and lists.
And I started when Diva was taking a drink of beer, so I saw your
this
face.
Is
like,
juice.
Oh, shit.
How can you tell? This is apple juice.
Okay, sparkling, wheat ale colored apple. Not
Martinelli's, yeah,
it's Martinelli's. It was kind of a Martinelli's color.
I actually have Martinelli's in my fridge. I love it. So
I got some with like raspberry in it for like it was fucking delicious,
really good.
Anyway, we are not sponsored by Martinelli's, but we are on the.
Oh my god, the commercials I would do for that.
Oh my god, I know. I'm like, guys, we'll do them maybe for like free or like real cheap. Like, and they'll be the most honest fucking ads you've ever had. I've got a whole list. Anyway, we're brought to you by the Podmoth Podcasting Network. They're amazing. Check out all the other podcasts. Woo! And this is part two of Parricides, murders, people who murder their parents.
I think you titled it "Parents Just Don't Understand," which I liked.
Yeah, they don't. It's true. And that can lead some people to murder, apparently. So, anyway, this is part two. You guys really seem to like part one. I don't think we've ever had so many downloads in a day. It's because we took a break and then we had and now we're back. I think that's true. Y'all missed us, didn't you? Exactly. We missed you too. But yeah, so let's do part two because it seems like people want us. They want us. So
people like kids killing their parents. I guess they like that.
Very interesting topic. So,
all right. So I picked this one because I was excited for you to roast this guy or kid, rather. It's kind of a kid.
Oh, I'm excited.
But it's still roastable. He is. Trust me.
I mean, if you're a kid but you're murdering people, like you're fair game. Period.
Sure. Yeah.
You know.
So this is the story of Daniel Petric. This happened in Wellington, Ohio, I believe in 2008. Mark Petric is 45. He is a pastor at some such church. I think I got it wrong, but it's called like the New Assembly of God. It's one of these.
Okay.
He's married to Susan, his wife, who's 43. They have 2 daughters who I believe are older, like out of the house.
Okay.
And 16-year-old Daniel.
All right.
Our kid is 16 here. That's why I called him a kid.
He's the baby and he's the boy. So we're already like on a path.
Yes. So they're just like a wholesome, religious, small town family. They do hunting. They do, that stuff.
They're white. They're a white family in like the Midwest.
In the Midwest, yes. Daniel played football for a while, but actually wasn't able to play anymore after getting a really serious back injury. And after this, he kind of gets like housebound or isn't able to be as active. And so as a result, he gets really into video games, which, recovering from an injury, sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Gonna do it. And he gets really into Call of Duty, but especially Halo. And this is right in the sweet spot of the golden age of Halo, the late 2000s here.
Okay.
2008, 2009.
That was
the thing.
Game. Yeah.
Yes,
totally.
That was the thing at the time. And according to his dad later, his behavior started to change and he got like pretty much just addicted to video games by everyone's accounts.
Okay.
He was playing them up to 18 hours a day.
Oh, there are kids that have died from that shit. Like that's gnarly. That's a lot.
Yes. And it became a source of conflict, obviously, because the family isn't into that. And they're also specifically not into the violence of, the first person shooter games in general. It's not their thing. They're like kind of churchy people. They don't like it.
Right.
And eventually his dad, specifically his parents, put a ban on the games. They take them away and they're like, no, you're not fucking doing this anymore. And he specifically, Daniel's pissed.
Right. Yeah.
This is about a week prior to things happening here. And Daniel says, look, I want to go buy the new Halo 3. And his parents are like, look, no, this isn't happening. This video game thing isn't fucking happening. Like, just hard no. So Daniel decides to sneak out at night to buy the game anyway.
Okay.
His parents actually catch him coming back with said game and say, hell no, once again. They take the game and they put it in a lockbox.
Okay.
So Daniel is so upset that he essentially like runs away from home and he stays with a friend who has Halo 3. So that
I guarantee you that wasn't by accident that he chose that friend.
Yes. He's like, he calls them first, like, so did you buy the new Halo game? Oh, can I come over? Yeah. So he and probably this kid was pissed too because he wanted to play the game and was like hogging it, right?
Yeah. You can't share it with an addict, you know?
Exactly. And it's not a 2-player game; it's a one person game.
Right.
So he goes over and he's playing it for like 16 to 18 hours a day at this friend's house. And at some point, however, after a few days away, he comes back home and he finds the keys to the lockbox. He goes searching for him.
Okay.
He gets the game back out of the lockbox and his dad's gun that was inside of it.
Okay.
Yeah. Here we go. So according to Mark, that's his dad, Daniel approaches his two parents as they were watching a baseball game on the TV. And he says to them, quote, hey, mom and dad, I have a surprise for you. Will you close your eyes?
Oh, what?
Which I think they do. He then shoots his dad in the back of the head once from behind and then shoots his mom 3 times. His mom died fairly quickly, but his father, Mark, will actually survive.
Woo, yeah, I was
shot in the head. Being shot in the head.
That's insane.
Yeah. No, I know. I've been telling his like account of it. So
right, I'm like, how did she get this?
Yeah. So and he has a really intense recovery. The footage of him in the hospital, like afterwards, he looks like obviously not great. It's a long recovery. I think he still has some issues like with his face or something. You know, obviously, as he will.
Yeah.
So after shooting his parents, Daniel put the gun in his dad's hand to fit with a dumb, very short-lived attempt at staging and like attempting to set up a story that his dad shot his mom before shooting himself.
I love that you're doing this because of how well it fits with my next one. It's like so good. Great. Okay. Yeah, this is perfect.
Yeah. I just had a thought. I'm like almost want to take a note here for a second. Yeah. So the fact that he shot his dad once, to me, in the head as well, where he shot him proves that he had enough forethought to think of that staging ahead of time. It wasn't an after the fact thing. It was a ahead of time thing.
Right.
Because you can't say he shot himself if you shoot him 5 times. Right.
Right. Exactly.
All over the place.
Unless it's, well, there have definitely been times where...
Oh, no. Yes.
Yeah.
But he thought of it like, well, what's going to look the best for that suicide story?
No, he took what's logical, not what cops think. But
but I'm just to say that was a forethought, not an afterthought.
Absolutely. No, I agree. I just want to dunk on cops anytime I can. So.
Yeah. I was just this will be kind of relevant later on. So coincidentally, at that moment, like right after the murder, his sister Heidi came over with her husband because they were supposed to come over that evening. Or he thought they were supposed to come over that evening, but they came earlier for whatever reason. So he thought he had ample staging time to set this up, and he gets surprised essentially.
Oh no.
So when Heidi and her husband come in or, arrive, Daniel tries to like peek out and say like, go away, he tries to get them to leave. He says his parents are fighting, but they hear groaning, presumably from Mark or both of them, Mark and Susan. And they kind of force their way in. I think her husband says, get back, Heidi. And kind of he forces his way in and peeps in just enough to see like blood and shit. Yeah. And he's like, holy shit. So he, okay. So he says to Heidi, call 911, like go away. And then also kind of call 911. She calls and she is hysterical. She says, quote, my mom is shot. My dad is shot. My brother said, don't come in. So she's outside freaking out. Daniel then makes his stupid escape. He leaves the murder weapon behind, but he makes sure to grab his treasured copy of Halo 3 and hops.
I'm sorry, what the fuck?
He hops in the family van and makes a dumb escape where he is quickly apprehended. He does not get to play Halo 3 again that I know of.
I'm sorry. I'm not laughing at this situation, but it's like Natural Born Killers, but instead of Juliette Lewis, it's just like a Halo 3 box. Like these, it's like insane to me.
Yeah, it's so ridiculous.
It's insane. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, a long time ago we did like stupidest reasons for murder. Like this could have been on that list as well.
Oh, it could have been number 1, man. This is fucked up. So bad.
Like I said, he's caught like right away. Like a block away, I think. He tells police at first in the interrogation that his dad shot his mom and then shot himself, how they were fighting. They had been yelling at each other that day. His acting is quite over the top. He cries, fake cries. He's like, why would my dad shoot my mom? Like he's like very exaggerated.
Right.
He says, he pretends to, well, I mean, he for all I know, he is religious, but he uses religion. He says, Lord, please don't let my dad die. Lord, please don't let my dad die. Like, that's what he does. So he keeps going with this for a while. And eventually in the interrogation, it does not take a ton of effort for the police to break him down. And he admits he shot his parents.
Okay. So this guy's a fucking idiot. There's something like, I'm sorry. I don't even know.
Case, if you weren't guessing where this is going to be all about the dangers of violent video games.
Oh, come on.
Which is so fucking annoying to me. Okay, just to wrap up, well, kind of wrap it up here. So Father Mike here, literally father, he's also a priest. He forgave his son because I think that's his vibe with his religiousness.
Right.
And he spoke at his sentencing about how his son does have remorse and regret. So he kind of like, he talks about how he was really mad at first, but then he kind of came around and like forgave him. He asked the judge to show mercy, which I don't know, in my opinion, he kind of does by our standards of criminal justice anyway. He's sentenced to 23 years to life.
Okay.
Again, maybe not mercy by Canadian standards, or Swiss standards, but it's mercy for us.
No, it is. And it's just a little, I mean,
he's also a teenager.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Right. But I mean, if he was not white, this wouldn't even be.
Oh no. Yes. It's like
ridiculous.
There's privilege happening, and there's also like we shouldn't be giving any teenager a life sentence happening. So
right.
There's a couple different things happening.
Be normal, 23 to life is plenty, but also let's apply that shit fairly. And like, but also, this guy's a fucking idiot. So anyway, okay.
So a lot of things happening. It's layered. The judge makes a very fucking stupid statement at sentencing, continuing this rhetoric about violent video games, which was, of course, his whole defense. Well, he pleads guilty, so it's not really a defense, but I guess it's a defense for a lenient, the plea for a lenient sentence.
Okay.
He says the judge says that he literally thought, Daniel literally thought that if he killed his parents, they would not die for real. They would come back to life and reset like in a video game.
What?
I'm sorry. It's so stupid. And the whole statement is so nice to him. And it really was giving notes, tasting notes of the fucking Brock Turner sentencing where he's like, you're a good kid. It's okay that you raped this girl. Like, because he's a white, middle class, normal looking white kid, he's literally like, you're a good guy, and like, again, would any of this response happen if this was a 16-year-old poor black kid?
Right. And wait, who said that he thought
the judge
would come back to life?
Okay, well, this was in the defense, but then in the sentencing, the
judge was like, I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe that this
there was no jury. The judge decided this sentence.
They did a bench trial.
Yeah. The judge decided this sentence, announces it, and then is like, he didn't really think his parents would die. He thought they would regenerate. Like
that is a smart defense lawyer to be like, hi, you're a middle class white kid. We're doing a bench trial because this is a fucking white judge. Like,
yes. No, but like, that is so stupid. Like, that is insanely stupid. No one, no matter how many video games they play, doesn't understand you shoot someone, they die. That's not real.
That's Jesus fucking Christ, dude.
It's so stupid.
Everything about this, I'm sorry, like, I do want to like totally dunk on this kid, but like it's hard because it's like when somebody says something so stupid that you don't even know how to reply.
Yeah.
Like that's where my brain is right now.
So Daniel will be eligible for parole in 2030 at age 39.
Oh my God.
And he is appealing his sentence still. He gave an interview on the Katie Couric show about 9 years ago. So that's still been like 2013. And he did, to his credit, seem remorseful. And he pretty much recounted what happened as his dad said it happened. So he does own up to it. He's not like denying responsibility entirely.
But then why is he appealing? Like,
right. But he is playing into the video games had a part in it, like factor, like he is playing into that narrative quite a bit. He says he didn't fully understand that he was taking a human life. So he plays into what the judge said. Obviously, he's trying to get out on appeal. So he's playing that up. You know, he says that he takes responsibility for it, but then he also says that video games were like a factor.
No, I mean, listen, it's one of those things that you can argue about forever because, you know, serial killers, it's like, oh, they had this horrible life, but a lot of them come from families with like multiple kids and nobody else does that shit. You know what I mean?
No, I mean, here's two things are happening at once. Like two things are happening here. The first thing is he's 16. I do not think he should be locked up for life.
Right.
Because I don't think any kid should be locked up for life because our justice system is fucked up. And in Canada, he would get like 5 years in juvenile detention or something, right? So
agreed.
Like, I believe we should be closer to that system, you know, or abolish everything. But he shouldn't be locked up forever. Granted. And he does seem genuinely remorseful.
Okay.
But secondly, this video game rhetoric is fucking stupid. Like,
yes.
Just, like, here's what I have a problem with. Like, look, maybe that factored into why he was really angry at his parents. Of course it did. However, to say that these games have that effect writ large, like in the world, is stupid as fuck. Because as I speak to you right now on fucking Zoom, my husband is shooting aliens in Dead Space. Like, you know, and he loves violent video games dearly, and he would never do any violence. Like,
he's like the most gentle person alive and like non-confrontational.
Yeah. And I have known people who have been that like 18-hour a day person. And here's the thing. It's not so much video game addiction as it is they're assholes. Like, there's something else going on with their personality. There's something else going on with their, like, I don't know, you know what I mean? There's other mental things happening besides just the game acting upon them. Like, they're not a passive recipient. They're choosing to be a dick. And also they're like often spoiled or entitled or allowed to do that, you know? And granted, his parents here were taking a stand against it, which is good. But anyway, I think I'm preaching to the choir to our listeners, but the like 90s like idea that Doom or whatever, you know, like violent video games makes people violent is very fucking stupid.
The Tipper Gore explicit lyric shit that happened, you know, and it's like, listen, like I agree. And here's the thing. I agree that our society is too violent, but that's because of the real violence that our government does and like perpetuates as being like the good guys. It's not because of violent lyrics or video games. The shit that makes our country violent is more real than what's being blamed. And I think that's, you know.
And also it's the same, like, you know, people that are politicians, especially that talk up this point about violent video games are the same ones taking money from the NRA. So it's like, let's talk about guns, you know, and like not to blame the parents here at all, but like if you want to blame an external factor, maybe the fact that Daniel's house was full of guns.
Yeah, I mean, there you go. Like he had a gun,
or maybe hunting. Perhaps you could say you could blame that. He was already shooting things.
He was accustomed to murdering living beings, you know, for sport, for fun. There you go. That was more realistic.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, so one last little point here. I just wanted to tell you about this one guy here that sucks. So this case continues to be a big thing for quote unquote anti-violent video game activists, which I knew existed, but now I really know. In November 2021, a year ago, there was some press about one of these activists. Could you hear my sarcastic quotes?
Yeah, you feel them in the recording.
Yeah, this guy's name is Jack Thompson, and he sucks. So I just wanted to finish here because he's the last press on this case. It's this guy. He actually wrote a letter to the courts asking that Daniel get a new trial. He said that Halo, which hasn't happened, but he said that Halo 3 was responsible for the murders, like entirely. He said the game effectively, quote, trained him to kill his parents, which maybe it was the hunting. I don't know, you know?
Yeah, again. Or the gun culture in his home and in our country. Anyway.
Yeah. Or, you know, mental illness. Just he's a dick. Anyway.
Yeah, it could be a lot of things.
Yeah. So this seems to be this guy, Jack Thompson, his whole thing. He does like full-time 9 to 5. He does lawsuits for people suing media and video game companies for this reason. He also has sued bands over their obscene lyrics and like rappers.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And he's also come out just making statements like willy-nilly that all different kinds of murders were because of violent video games, including like, what's the one? Oh, the DC shooter, saying that was all because the kid played first-person shooters.
Oh, God.
Like, no. He also ran for state attorney against Janet Reno in Florida before she was attorney general. And he, in his campaign, he publicly called her a closet lesbian with mental disorders.
Oh, so this guy is just like a fucking
homophobic.
Yeah, he's just a giant fucking turd.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what I just wanted to tell you about that guy. That's like Daniel's biggest defender right now.
Oh, that's a good look.
Again, I don't think he should be locked up forever, but man, it sucks that this is the angle they're taking. How about he's a remorseful kid?
Yeah.
How about he's 16, a kid?
I'm sorry. Yeah. I was fucking addicted to something that I couldn't control and I acted poorly. I apologize.
His best defense should not be this. It should be, I was a child and I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what it should be. Fucking own up to it. Stop blaming shit that's not at fault. Oh my God. Jesus. Okay.
There you go.
There it is. All right.
Halo 3.
Fucking good game, man.
I mean, is it really though? It's not even that good a game worth killing over. Sam, is Halo a good game, Sam? Sam doesn't even like Halo. He just said,
I heard him. He said, meh. I heard it. I don't know. I think Call of Duty is probably better, but I think Halo was like a trailblazer, honestly. It was like one of the bigger games of the time.
I don't love first-person shooters. Like, I don't think they cause violence, but I don't like them in my house because I find it's like, am I in a mass shooting right now? I find them to be a bit stressful, you know?
I like playing Doom because you're just killing aliens, and those aren't real. Yeah. So that's more fun.
Yeah.
But that's first person.
Sam's killing zombies in space right now.
Yeah, that's great. That's exactly. It's perfect. Fuck it. That's great. Better than, yeah. Okay, whatever. Anyway, I can't say anything. I just worked for Call of Duty recently. So anyway. All right. My case is, in my opinion, very, very interesting. And it's going to be up to the listeners to decide their own conclusions, come to their own conclusions. Although, I'm going to fucking tell you what I think. So
yes.
This is the case of Jesse Madison Holton. He went by Madison. It's hard to find a lot of information about him prior to this, but I was able to piece some things together by reading obituaries and reading, Reddit and just other random shit. So he was born, I believe, in 1999 in Eclectic, Alabama.
That's a cool name.
Yeah, I know. And he
was the word eclectic.
Yeah, eclectic. Yep. Which is funny because it's a town of like 1,000 people in Alabama, so it's probably not super eclectic. But hey, who am I to judge? So he went, like I said, he went by his middle name, Madison, and he was born to high school sweethearts Jesse Michael, who went by Mike, and April Holton. Michael was also born in Eclectic in 1979, and April as well in 1978. So his parents were pretty young when they had him. They were like 20 and 21 years old. Like I said, high school sweethearts. They had 2 other boys as well, who I believe were younger than Madison. So all were born when the parents were pretty young, but it seemed intentional. It seemed like they got married and started having kids, and they just did it at a younger time, which used to be like the way people did things. And I think we talked about this last week too.
Yeah.
So April was a stay-at-home mom. She did a ton of charity and volunteer work. She was at every baseball game played by her kids. She was just like super mom. She was like super community lady. And Mike was a firefighter and later a fire chief, and even traveled to New York during 9/11 to help there. So he was something of a hero. He also like taught, I think, classes around like firefighting or CPR, something like that. And he was also his kid's little league coach. So we just have this like perfect little family.
Very wholesome.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Then in 2012, when Mike was only 33, he was elected mayor of Eclectic. Oh. So a pretty big feat for being so young. To be mayor at 33 is like pretty good. But keep in mind, like I said, this is a town of around like 1,000 people, but still, I mean, it's still pretty cool, right?
Yeah, no.
As impressive as that was, he ended up stepping down after only 2 years, citing family issues.
Ugh, okay.
Yeah. So I don't know what those family issues were. To this day, there's no information. available as to what those were, but I wanted to call that out because it's potentially important later on. So Madison, I think, grew up a pretty normal kid. He did like to party. And I will say that I had a friend whose dad was the mayor of our town. And he was the mayor before, I think, like, we were born. I think he was the mayor in like the early 70s or something. He had kids super late. But his son was a fucking partier. So if Madison,
you're kind of prominent, you're kind of like highfalutin.
Yeah, you got money, you've got like kind of status, whatever. I don't know if he liked to smoke weed, but I do know that Madison liked to drink.
Okay.
And he was a bit of a problem for his parents, right? I think, he was getting into trouble at school. He was not listening to his parents. He would go out when they tell him not to. He's coming home drunk. So this was kind of an ongoing problem. And he's like 16, 17 years old when this was all kind of starting. So this is something his parents don't know how to handle. Like I said, they had kids really young. They got married really young. So I think that they're pretty like, quote unquote, like street shooters. Like they didn't really probably party very much. They probably didn't drink very much. I know they were both like really active in the church. So, I think to them, this is very, like, you would think sometimes if you have young parents, it would be easier to relate on that level. But I think for them, this was very like something they weren't used to, right? This was like,
they're churchy.
They're churchy. They didn't know how to handle this, right?
Yeah.
But Madison's kind of like, fuck y'all, I'm doing whatever I want. So on September 12th, 2016, at this point, Madison is 17 years old and he has a party. And it's a Sunday and it's the middle of the day. And his dad is gone to work and he has people over, which I think
that's bold.
Is bold as fuck. Yes, exactly the word I was going to use.
Oof.
So while Mike is at work, somebody calls him. One of Madison's friends' parents calls Mike and he's like, yo, my kid just showed up at home fucking wasted and told me he came from your house. So like, what is going on? Right?
Parents
so
talk.
Mike is pissed, obviously, embarrassed probably too. And also at the end of his rope because this is something they've been dealing with, right?
Yeah.
So he rushes home, kicks everybody out, and then he calls April to come over and join him at the home. And you might be thinking, why would he have to call April to come home if she's a stay-at-home mom? Well, the reason for this is the two of them had separated a month earlier. And she had filed for divorce.
Okay.
So it's unclear why Madison wasn't with her. I do know that he had chosen to stay living with his dad when they split up. But maybe that's where the younger boys were because I don't think they were home. There's actually very little mention of his younger brothers throughout like any stories. I am a creep. I did find their Facebook pages. So I know they exist. But anyway.
I always stalk people in these cases too. It's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Mike and April call the cops and the cop they send out one cop because again, it's the town of 1,000. So Mike comes outside and he meets the cop and he's like, listen, when you come inside, you're going to see Madison has handcuffs on. I handcuffed him to try and teach him a lesson because I'm pissed at him and I'm trying to like scare him straight. And I'm also just like at the fucking end of my rope. So the cop is like, no problem. Thanks for letting me know. Right. So it seems like a controlled situation. So, and also like they probably all fucking knew each other. You know what I mean? Because he was the mayor and these people are like, again, 1,000 people. So they go inside, they talk. I don't know exactly what was said to or by Madison, but his parents are like, we want him to go to juvie. Like, we want him to go to jail for what he did. He was serving minors alcohol. He was throwing a party in our home. What can we do? And the cops are like, well, I will take this report. You can come down tomorrow on Monday when like everything's open. Because again, it's Alabama on a Sunday. Everything's probably closed, including like the administration at the police station, right?
Yeah.
So they're like, come in tomorrow, we'll process everything and we'll get this started so that you can have him arrested for what he did. And they're like, okay, great. Thank you so much. The cop leaves after a couple minutes. And 11 minutes later, a 911 call comes in from the neighbor's house. So the cop turns back around and like these guys kind of live, it's like they have neighbors, but it's not like, it's a spread out kind of town. Like you've got people have land. 11 minutes later, he gets the call. He comes back. he shows up, this cop, and Madison is with the neighbor. And he's like, my parents were fighting. We need help, right?
Okay.
So the cop goes into the house and he finds both April and Mike on the ground suffering from gunshot wounds. April is barely alive and dies the next day. And Mike is DOA. Like he was just dead when the cop got there.
Okay.
April was shot both through her hand, which then went into her head. Like she put her hand up defensively and then again in the head. And then Mike was shot in the head as well. And at first, the cops believed, based on the trajectory, that he shot himself in the mouth. So they thought it was a murder-suicide. They're like, oh, he put the gun in his mouth and it came out the back of his head. A pathologist comes in and says, no. He was shot in the back of the head and it came out of his mouth. So this isn't a murder-suicide. This is a double homicide, right? Yeah. So they're saying somebody else shot both of them. And we all know who that somebody else would be.
Yeah, not a long list of suspects here. No.
Right, Madison. So he is then arrested. 1 month later, the charges against him, I think it's like October 26th, the charges against him are all dropped due to a lack of evidence.
What?
Yep. He was charged with a felony, a class 3 felony. We don't know what it was, but he spent 15 months in jail for it. But because he was 17, his records are sealed. So nobody knows what the felony was that he was actually convicted of and sent to jail for.
Okay.
So that's basically the story of what happened.
Okay.
But I'm not done, of course. Because now we get to talk about whether or not Madison murdered his parents or if Mike murdered April and then killed himself. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to go back and forth a little bit because this becomes kind of conversational, because it's hard to not have a point.
I mean, I feel like it comes down to that gun trajectory, right? Like kind of entirely?
No. Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes and no. I'll tell you. Let me tell you. Okay. So the people who say that Madison is guilty cite his supreme lack of emotion after the shooting, pointing to things like him expressing being more upset about missing homecoming than the death of his parents. He was actually like, I'm just bummed I'm in jail because I don't get to go to homecoming now. On the day that his parents died. He did not give a shit.
Did not care. Yeah.
Not at all. He also called a friend from jail and asked him about girls. Like, are they saying things like, oh my God, I slept with a murderer? Like just callous shit like that.
Yeah, he's not that cool.
Yeah. So also like prosecutors were like, is that enough to count as a confession that he said that on the phone? And they're like, no, he didn't say I did it. He's just asking if girls are saying things
he's just generally being a dick.
Just being an idiot too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's also a 17-year-old boy. So I mean,
right.
Also, it makes sense. Obviously, he has motive. He was upset with his parents. He didn't want to go to jail. He knew they were going to turn him in the next day to go to jail, so it stands to reason he would kill them out of anger or to avoid getting arrested, especially if he then frames it as a murder-suicide, right? So what Jesse said when the police got there is that as soon as the cops left, his parents started arguing and they shut him out of the room where they were arguing. And then he heard his mom screaming. So he was banging on the door, like pushing on it and trying to get it open and couldn't get it open. So he kicked it in. And when he got in there, his dad had his hands on his mom. So he immediately turned around and ran out and went to the neighbor's house and asked the neighbor to call 911. So that's Jesse's story.
Okay.
Or Madison's story, sorry. And it never once changed. They interviewed him 50 times and not one detail ever changed.
Okay.
Which is pretty good. He also, just as an aside, asked for a lie detector test repeatedly and was never given one. He was like, give me the test, give me the test, give me the test, I'll take the test. They never gave him one, right? So it sounds like he could have done it, but it also sounds like maybe he couldn't. One of the other weird things that people say point to him having done it is that he said he never heard any gunshots. So when he was running out of his parents' house to go get help, he didn't hear any gunshots. And police recreated it. And every scenario, if they were in the neighbor's house, if they were running to the neighbor's house, if they were in the house, they could hear the gunshots.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're like, that's kind of weird that you're saying you didn't
It is.
Hear those.
Yes.
So I have more, but I'll get back to it. So now we're going to talk about people who think that Mike did it. So first, we're going to talk about the actual gunshot wounds, which I know you said was kind of a point of contention, right?
Right.
So as the pathologist said, Mike was shot in the back of the head. He was also shot by what would have been his left hand, and he's a right-handed person.
Okay.
So we're like, okay, there it is right there. That being said, the gun, they could tell that when the gun was placed against the back of his head, it was upside down. So Diva, do me a favor and take your hand and put it to the back of your head. Which way does your
down?
Hand? Upside down. It's upside down, isn't it?
Oh, so no, I was going to say that would be like crazy to do.
No, it's try to do it the other way. It's way less natural. It's like super weird. But if you put your own
left hand
to the back of your head, it's upside down.
It's possible, yeah.
It's more plausible than it being right side up. To especially if it's like your non-dominant hand. You're just reaching it over. So, but also I watched you do it and it automatically your hand was upside down.
Yeah, you're right.
So it makes sense that if it was self-inflicted that it would have been upside down. Also, there is an unsubstantiated, as far as I could find, rumor that Mike was ambidextrous. So, so now we're going to talk about motive. As I had mentioned, the couple had recently separated and April was filing for divorce. Apparently, Mike was not taking this well. He had a journal that he kept that was later brought into like evidence, and it indicated that he was having suicidal thoughts related to this breakup. He also wrote a letter to April saying, quote, "I just can't go on knowing that you are with somebody else." And quote, "It was either me or the both of us."
Oof. So there's some motive happening between them as well.
Yeah. Also, thinking about him stepping down from mayor as early as 2014, it could have been because of Madison and like problems with the kids, but it also could have been their relationship. Like, we don't know.
Yeah.
And to that point, it's possible that Madison was callous about his parents dying because he was living in like a shitty abusive household with two people who were fighting all the time.
And there could be tumult going all around, all directions.
Exactly. So perhaps his way of dealing with this was just to shut it all out and to shut it all off,
Yeah.
Also, April had bruises as though she had been beat before she was shot. And Mike's DNA was found under her fingernails and he had fresh scratches on his face. As though they had been fighting.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
Mike was also on hydrocodone, oxycodone, and tramadol at the time of the murder.
Oh, shit.
Yes.
Oh, my God. Okay.
Another thing to point out is that Madison didn't have a speck of blood on him. And this was a small caliber gun, but it's still, he should have had some spatter.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The small gun also lends to the idea that maybe he didn't hear the gun go off because he was running in a panic to try and get help. He could have been yelling. He could have been doing any number of things where he just didn't happen to hear it because it's not like a super loud boom. It was like a small pop, right?
Yeah.
And the neighbors all said they didn't hear it either, which means it could be in his favor or against him. But if the neighbor didn't hear it at any point, that means it just wasn't that loud. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he could have shot them before running over to the neighbor's house. But, if they were going to hear it, they would have heard it then too. Right?
Yeah.
Another thing to mention is that Madison was still in handcuffs when the police arrived. As in, because he was still handcuffed when the cop left, which, like, why would he leave the kid in handcuffs?
Yeah, that makes no sense. That detail makes no sense at all.
Yeah, but apparently that was the truth because the cop never came forward and said, no, I took them off of him or his parents.
So they put him in his room and they shut the door and he's handcuffed?
I think they were in a room and they, like, shut him out of the room into, like, the larger portion of the house.
Okay.
So things got heated so quickly that they didn't even have time to remove the handcuffs from him before this all went down.
Okay. So were his hands in front of him handcuffed or behind him?
No, behind him. So how would he shoot
impossible
them? Well, that being said, it has been argued that the key was actually just right by the front door. So he could have got the key, unlocked the handcuffs, shot his parents, and then put them back on.
Redone it. Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, it's possible, but kind of convoluted.
Right. It's also argued that, or I heard that he apparently fell into a puddle that could have washed evidence from his clothing. Like he fell in a puddle like he was running to like the neighbor's house or something.
Okay.
And the clothing wasn't even swabbed until the next day. So the idea that he didn't have any blood on him could have been...
So they're missing some evidence.
They are. But even so, the thing that to me is maybe the most damning against or in Madison's favor is that, well, no, there's a few things, but the pathologist who originally said it was a double homicide would not testify to that because they said they couldn't be sure. They were not confident enough to say that it was for sure a double homicide. So,
okay.
And to be clear, April's brother, along with pretty much everybody else in the Holton family on either side, believes that Mike killed April and not Madison.
Okay, so, I mean, that counts for something.
Yeah,
for sure.
They all were like, he was taking it really rough. He killed her and then couldn't believe he did it. And then killed her. And I don't know that there was any sort of abuse prior to this, but it was sort of hinted at. So I don't know. What do you think?
I've gone back and forth. This is hard. I don't know. I was like pretty hard line against him. And now I'm like, oh, the more things you said, I'm like,
I think Mike did it 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
It was the dad. Madison is a 17-year-old who's been subjected to, deeply religious, super straight, black and white parents who were also kind of young, who were clearly not having a good time with each other.
No.
And by black and white, I mean parents who like I said, parents just don't understand. You know what I mean? Like they don't have any concessions for their son and what he may be going through. I think that the way that he behaves, while it's really gross and shitty, is also like a defense mechanism. And it in no way means that he did this. Like,
no, also people don't show emotions all the time. It's a cliche that's like said by people who did kill people a lot, but people do show emotions differently. Maybe he has some kind of mental thing that makes him just not want to be emotional,
Right. Absolutely. And I mean, also 17-year-old boys, like, do you really expect them to be like overly like in touch with their emotions?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, especially coming from a family like this where you're probably conditioned to like be a man,
Right. When he was also mad at them. Still,
he was.
Maybe,
That's
a really ambiguous case though.
It is. I mean, in my opinion, the DNA, the under the fingernails with matching face scratches, like all of that to me, the DNA evidence is in support of it being Mike. The circumstantial evidence, there is circumstantial evidence going both ways, but I think more of it points to Mike. The family saying it was Mike. Madison's story never changing. It's just, I don't know. I think he's innocent. But in true cop fashion, whoever the sheriff or whatever is of Eclectic has just decided, it's like the Italian prosecutor in the Amanda Knox case. Like, I've decided that they're guilty, and so they're guilty no matter what for the rest of my life. I'm going to die on this hill. Yeah. And that's what that guy's doing. Okay. And in response, Madison has actually come out and given interviews like, this guy is out to get me. Like, they could still charge him. They never.
Yeah. Okay. Case. Interesting.
So it's still possible. So he's actually going to law school to become a defense lawyer because he's like, fuck this shit, Yeah. So, in any case, there we have it.
Wow. That was compelling and ambiguous.
Yes. Okay. How I like them. Yeah. But for the record, I don't think that he did it. I would love if our listeners chime in.
Also, it's definitely possible. Like, I can see a world where he did, but it's less likely.
Yeah, agreed. Very much. Very much. Also, really quick, we had a listener chime in on our Instagram about Ryerson University.
Oh, yeah.
Which made me feel bad because we kind of a little bit talked shit on it. And they went there.
Oh, I know. I saw that.
And they're a fucking ER nurse, which, like, hi, if you're a fucking ER nurse, then you are, like, just amazing and a badass. Yeah. And, like, you are probably, like, tough as nails. So, one, please don't take my shading it as anything other than, like, lack of knowledge or otherwise known as ignorance on my part as to how the Canadian school system works.
Right.
I was basing that off of comments that I was reading on the article, which was written by one of her friends by people who live in Canada who were like, oh, that fucking school, like
trusting some Canadians would be. Yeah.
Right. Well, I have no basis for comparison. Like, I don't know myself, So no shade. And also Egerton Ryerson is who it was named after. And he was like one of the founders of the fucking residential schools in Canada. So they renamed the school, and fuck that guy forever. If you know where his grave is, please go piss on it because he's a piece of shit.
Yes. So. Yeah.
But anyway, no shade intended. It was more just like kind of the vibe of both her parents being like, that school's not good enough, and then the people in the comments being like, oh, like it's hard to get in there. But like, it sounds like it is kind of hard to get in there.
I mean, you're just reporting what other people the shade that other people already shaded.
Yeah, I have no opinion. But also they said, and they didn't answer me when I asked how much it would have been, but they said it was more than $3,000. So I don't know how she was convincing her parents that they didn't need to pay her.
When did that happen, that case?
Like 2006, I want to say, something like that. It was like the early 2000s that she was going. So
yeah, I mean, Canada does like charge less than us.
They do.
It's hard to know. It's hard for us to know. Yeah.
If you guys don't know what we're talking about, go back and listen to the first half of this, which like all of you did. So we're probably fine.
No one jumps to part 2. I don't think they do.
No. Most people don't.
No.
So no shade. And you're awesome. Thank you for what you do.
Yeah.
Okay. So next week,
cool.
I'm picking.
Yes. What are we doing?
Murders of the Midwest, which I love that you did the one that you did because it's ushering this in. Just like we've been doing that recently.
Ohio, Midwestern. And we've also been talking a lot about the developments in Delphi, which is another Midwestern place. The fucking probable cause warrant just got unsealed. We were just talking about it. So that's another Midwest thing that's happening right now. Yeah. And just really quickly, Delphi, the guy had a gun. There was a bullet on the ground between the bodies that they just recently matched to the gun in forensically. So it 100% came from his gun, not just the same type or anything, but like that gun. It had the marks of the barrel of his gun because the bullet had been in the gun and then somehow fell out and got left there. Now, whether or not he actually shot them is still, we don't know. My assumption is not. No, it's widely theorized he did not, and it's widely theorized that he used it to get them down the hill as intimidation. And one crazy new bit too, that this is bonus content now, but one crazy new bit is that they apparently one of the girls said something about a gun on the part of the tape that we never heard. And now we know why we didn't hear it, because it gives away some of the stuff that the cops were trying to keep. Because he probably didn't know that he dropped that bullet. Yeah, and he used the gun, set guys down the hill. He had the gun on them, and then they went down the fucking hill. Yeah, because I always thought, like, if he just had a knife, like, one of them could have run away. But obviously, it's got to be a gun. And apparently the video showed them going down the hill as well. Or starting down. Oh, that's fucking heartbreaking. I never want to see that. I really don't want to see that. No, I don't think they'll ever release that. I hope not. I think people will want to see it, but I hope they'll probably have to show it at trial, but we won't get to the public won't see it. Yeah, they're going to seal that shit off. The other thing is that this guy, Richard Allen, even though he was never officially like mentioned as a suspect, was interviewed in 2017. And they've been slowly building the case because apparently there was video, like surveillance from a nearby business that caught his car driving by. He admitted to being there on those trails at that time. Other people saw him on the trails at that time. So it's like, it's so crazy. I have to give it to these cops. I have to, begrudgingly, for how good of a job they did, like not letting any of this information out and fucking getting the guy. So, and they were definitely working this whole time. They didn't stop. So. No, they didn't just pay lip service and do nothing. Like they worked their asses off. So anyway, you guys can go find that on the internets like we did and read it and have your fucking mind blown. More Midwestern cases for you next week. Yes, I can't wait. All right. And until then, stay off our list. Stay off them.